We all dream of exotic getaways. But what happens when the journey turns into a nightmare? In today's video, we're diving into 3 true travel stories that are so chilling, they might just make you rethink your next vacation. These are real encounters with terror, mystery, and the kind of horror you'd only hear about in whispers. Stay tuned, because these stories are not for the faint of heart, and by the end, you'll be questioning what really lurks in the unknown. Let's get started. I've always been a big fan of solo travel. Most of my friends are either too busy with work or can't afford to constantly hop on flights to explore new places, so I've gotten used to doing it all on my own. Honestly, I don't mind. It's freeing in a way. One of my solo trips took me to San Diego for the very first time. I'd already visited most of the big cities in California, but San Diego was still on my bucket list, so I finally decided to cross it off. I booked a decent hotel close to downtown. Nothing fancy, but comfortable enough for a solo traveler. As I was checking in, I met a guy in the lobby who looked a little older than me. He struck up a casual conversation, asking where I was from, how long I'd be staying, and whether I'd been to San Diego before. He mentioned it was his second time in the city, and that he was also traveling alone. He even offered to help carry my bags upstairs since he was heading in that direction anyway. I accepted, thinking it was just a kind gesture. He carried my bags into the elevator, and we rode up to the second floor together. When we reached my room, he set my bags down outside the door, said it was nice meeting me, and wished me a good stay. I thanked him again. He walked off down the hallway, and I let myself into the room. After dropping my things on the bed, I laid down to take a quick nap before heading out. Later on, when I went back down to the lobby ready to go explore the city, the woman at the front desk called me over just as I was about to walk outside. She asked me what the man had done when we went upstairs together. I told her he just helped carry my bags and left. That's when she told me something that immediately put me on edge. She had seen him lingering around outside for a while and noticed he came in right after I did. She didn't think he was actually staying at the hotel. She warned me to keep my distance if I saw him again. I tried to brush it off and hoped maybe she was mistaken, that he really was just a friendly guy. But her warning stuck with me. I decided to take her seriously, just in case. After that, I headed out to explore, trying to enjoy my day while keeping her words in the back of my mind. A few hours later, I came back to the hotel just to freshen up and change clothes before heading out for dinner. The front desk had a new person working now, which didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary at the time. I went up to my room, took a quick shower, changed into something nicer, and laid down again for a short power nap before my evening plans. That's when things got weird. I was just starting to drift off when there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud or aggressive, more of a soft tap. Then I heard a man's voice, low and almost too quiet to make out, say, "Housekeeping." That immediately struck me as odd. It was my first day there. I hadn't called for housekeeping, and it was well past the time they usually come around. Maybe it was just a mistake and they had the wrong room. Still, something about it didn't sit right with me. I got up and cautiously looked through the peephole, and what I saw chilled me. Nothing. No one was there. The hallway was completely empty. Then, like a lightning bolt, my mind jumped to the guy from earlier. Could it have been him? Was he pretending? To be hotel staff to get me to open the door? I didn't answer. I stepped back from the door and went straight to my phone to call the front desk. I asked if they had sent anyone from housekeeping to my room, and, as I suspected, they hadn't. My stomach dropped. I asked them to send someone up immediately, just for peace of mind. About 5 minutes later, a real hotel maid knocked on my door. This time I checked the peephole and saw her uniform clearly. I opened the door, explained politely what had happened, and thanked her for coming. She looked a little concerned too, but nodded and told me to be careful. That was enough. For me, I grabbed my things and left for dinner. Trying to shake the nerves off, I went on with my night. I had dinner downtown and even hopped on one of those City Lights night tours to get my mind off everything. The streets were busy, the city was beautiful, and for a moment, it felt like any normal trip again. But the unease lingered, just under the surface. When I got back to the hotel around 10 p.m., I stopped at the front desk again. This time, I needed answers. I told the woman there about the man I met earlier and what had happened with someone pretending to be housekeeping. I asked her point blank if she had seen anyone matching his description in the lobby. She shook her head and said she hadn't seen anyone like that. To help ease my anxiety, she even pulled up the live surveillance feed from the cameras on my floor. According to the footage, no one had been in the hallway at the time of the knock. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. In fact, it made everything feel even more unsettling. Where did that voice come from? I thanked her and headed back up to my room. Once inside, I locked every lock on the door, changed out of my clothes, and crawled into bed. I turned on the TV, anything to drown out the silence, and tried to fall asleep. But the feeling of being watched, of not knowing who was out there, stuck with me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Within the hour, I was slowly slipping into sleep, that fuzzy space where dreams start blending with reality. The sounds from the TV were still playing in the background, but they were beginning to mix into whatever half-dream I was having. So when I heard a door gently click shut, it didn't fully register. I thought it was part of the dream. I stayed, curled up, eyes shut, brain barely processing anything until I felt the bed begin to shift. The mattress dipped, like someone was slowly crawling onto it. That's when my eyes flew open. I turned my head, confused and groggy, and what I saw instantly made my heart drop. A man, wearing a black COVID mask and a baseball cap pulled low over his face, was climbing into my bed. His body leaned toward me, and before I could react, his hands were on me. He reached to cover my mouth, trying to muffle any sound before I could scream. Panic took over. I twisted, thrashed, kicked, doing anything I could to fight back. Somehow I managed to get my mouth free just long enough to scream, pure, terrified instinct. A deep, blood-curdling scream that tore from my throat. He kept trying to shut me up, his grip tightening, but I wouldn't stop fighting. I kicked harder, swung my arms, trying to cause enough noise and movement to alert someone. Just as I was running out of strength, there was a loud knock on the door. Someone was outside. A woman's voice. That moment changed everything. I screamed. Again, this time clearly. "Help!" The man froze, clearly realizing this was no longer going the way he'd planned. He let go of me and bolted toward the door, yanking it open and shoving the woman outside to the ground in his rush to escape. She caught a full look at him as he sprinted down the hall and disappeared into the stairwell. She ran inside to check on me. I was frozen, shaking, still in complete shock, tears already pouring down my face. More guests opened their doors after hearing the commotion, and soon hotel staff came rushing in. The police were called, and based on surveillance footage, the man had somehow gotten hold of a master key, the kind only hotel employees should have. That's how he got into my room. With the mask and hat hiding his face, his identity was still a mystery. But in my gut, I knew it was the same guy who helped me with my bags that first day. Looking back, I think he was trying to learn my room number from the very beginning. Maybe he had done this before, and maybe terrifyingly, he had succeeded before. I tried to hold it together and salvage what was left of my trip, but it was hard. The hotel reimbursed me for my entire stay and gave me a new room, but emotionally, I was far from okay. In hindsight, I probably should have pressed charges against the hotel. They turned over the footage to the police, but I never heard back from anyone. No calls, no follow-ups, no request to identify a suspect, which likely means the man was never found, or worse, never really pursued. This happened several years ago, 2013 or 2014, I think. It's all kind of a blur now. I was just a freshman in college, attending university in New York City. It was Christmas break. And I remember that because I was thousands of miles from home. My family was all the way in Bulgaria. I was completely on my own. For those of you who might not be familiar, Bulgaria is a small country tucked into Eastern Europe, right between Romania and Greece. It's not exactly known for its safety standards, reputation, or tight regulations, which makes the irony of this story stand out even more. Just a few days before Christmas Eve, I was at JFK Airport in New York. My plan had been to surprise my family and friends back home in Bulgaria over the holidays. It was supposed to be a heartwarming reunion. Of course, JFK was completely packed. People rushing to see loved ones, stressed parents juggling luggage and kids, and long, winding lines of restless travelers. The chaos made everything 10 times harder, getting through security, weighing, bags, even finding a place to sit. After hours of standing, shuffling and waiting, I finally made it to my gate and felt a tiny sense of relief wash over me. My first flight from Manhattan to Istanbul was finally boarding. It was going to be a long one, 8 hours in economy class, so I braced myself for discomfort and stiffness. I ended up seated between two men. And just for context, I'm about 5 feet tall and barely over 110 pounds. So being crammed between two strangers, especially ones who were both way taller and clearly stronger than me, already had me on edge. The man on my right kept mostly to himself. He had black hair, wore glasses, and under his hoodie you could tell he was low-key ripped. No real interaction. Fine. But the guy on my left? He gave me the creeps almost immediately. He'd randomly mutter things under his breath, and kept picking at his skin, fidgeting nonstop. Sometimes, he'd lean his arm a little too close to mine. It made me uneasy. I kept trying to brush it off, reminding myself it was just a few hours and I'd be in Bulgaria soon. That thought helped me power through, until I started catching him blatantly staring at me. Not a glance, staring. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he had a condition that made it hard to read social cues, but the longer it went on, the more intentional it felt. At one point, I was watching Season 2 of American Horror Story to distract myself. Asylum, the one about a mental hospital filled with disturbed killers and tortured souls. That's when he leaned toward me and asked, in this strange, nervous tone, why I was watching something that misrepresents the mentally ill. The question came out of nowhere and made me uncomfortable. Still, I stayed calm and politely asked if he needed something, because at the end of the day I was minding my own business, headphones in, but he just stared me dead in the eye and said, with zero emotion, I just think it's fucked up how everyone thinks. People who skin others alive are crazy. I mean, aren't we all like that? That's what he said, and I remember freezing. My brain spiraled, trying to process what I had just heard. Who the hell was I sitting next to? I glanced around, hoping maybe someone else caught it too. But no one reacted. I gave this awkward little chuckle, trying to brush it off like it didn't faze me. Inside, though, I was panicking. The rest of the flight, I didn't sleep. I barely even blinked. I seriously debated asking the flight attendants if there was an open seat in the back, anywhere but next to him. But I stayed put, too nervous to draw attention. Eventually, after what felt like forever, the flight landed in Istanbul. The second the seatbelt sign turned off, I grabbed my things and got out of there like my life depended on it. I wish that was the end of the story. I wish I could say the rest of my trip was uneventful. And for the most part, it was. Christmas came and went. I saw my family and friends. But that guy's voice, that one sentence, stayed in my head, echoing like a bad dream I couldn't shake. When January came around, it was time to fly back to New York. I was repacking my tote bag, throwing out receipts and random junk I'd stuffed in it throughout the trip. That's when I found it. A note, folded up and hidden between the lining of the bag. My stomach dropped before I even opened it, and when I did, I felt sick. The note said, I wish I could see what you look like under your skin. I just froze. He must have slipped it in when I dozed off on the plane. I wish I had taken a picture of it. I really do. Because just a month later, in February, my younger sister sent me a link to a news article. It was about the same man from my flight. His photo confirmed it. He'd been arrested in Istanbul on multiple counts: rape, attempted rape, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, and first-degree murder. I stared at the article, shaking. I couldn't breathe. That could have been me. That flight, that note. It wasn't just creepy. It was dangerous. After that, I stopped traveling for the holidays for a long time. I just didn't feel safe anymore. It wasn't until winter of 2018 that I finally decided to try again. To escape the cold, my girlfriend Claire and I booked a one-week stay at a beach resort in Mexico. Warm weather, blue water, and palm trees sounded like the reset I needed. The resort was gorgeous and surprisingly affordable for a 7-day, all-inclusive stay. We had access to a buffet, 3 pools, beachfront bars, an entertainment hall, and a list of fun group excursions. It was supposed to be a dream getaway. The first few days, we soaked in the sun and took full advantage of the unlimited drinks package. The resort was surrounded by scenic roads and dense jungle, and by the 3rd day, we decided to rent a car. We took a private shuttle out to the nearest rental shop just beyond the resort's property. The shuttle driver gave us a warning before we even stepped out. Don't stray too far from the coast. A lot of those inner areas aren't exactly safe. It felt like a casual comment at the time, something you'd expect to hear from any cautious local. But we'd soon learn he meant it quite literally. We rented a Ford Fiesta, nothing glamorous. This place didn't have Mustangs or Camaros, just the basics. The rental shop was located in a small town about 5 miles north of the resort, right off a main road that ran along a string of beachfront properties. On one side of the road, resorts, palm trees, and postcard views. On the other, miles and miles of untamed jungle and the occasional rural village. We decided to drive south, coasting along that road until we made it to Tulum. I'd always heard people rave about Tulum, how it was a hot spot, full of Instagram-worthy views and trendy cafes. But driving through the actual city was underwhelming. It didn't match the picture-perfect version everyone back home talked about. So after a quick loop around, we headed back north, not totally sure what to do next. That's when we saw a dirt road leading into the jungle. We were feeling adventurous, and against our better judgment, we turned in to explore. Dense jungle lined both sides of the wide dirt path, stretching out seemingly forever. At first, it was kind of fun, a little off-roading detour. Claire, of course, was nervous about taking a rental car into the jungle. She kept saying we'd end up scratching it or getting stuck in the mud, and to be fair, she had a point. So, after a few minutes, we decided to turn back. I started a slow 3-point turn to get us back toward the main road. Just as we finished turning, 3 men suddenly emerged from the trees and stepped out into the middle of the dirt road. Claire and I instantly looked at each other and said the same thing under our breath. Oh no. I slowed the car to a stop and cracked my window slightly as one of the men approached. He started speaking in Spanish. I replied, "No hablo español," trying to keep my voice steady, but my hands were already sweating. Claire tensed up beside me. A second man approached her window and knocked. I told her firmly, "Don't open it." The guy at my window kept repeating one word, "Money, money." I glanced ahead and saw the third man, who had been standing in front of the car, begin to move toward my window too. That's when I noticed something glint in his hand. He had pulled a knife out of his pocket. Without thinking, I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires spitting dust into the air. The men yelled and started running after us, but they didn't stand a chance. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself think. I didn't ease up on the gas until we were back on the paved road, far away from that dirt path. After that, The idea of aimlessly driving around no longer felt like a fun way to explore. When we returned to the resort, we parked the Fiesta in the lot and left it there for the rest of the trip. We weren't ready to return the rental car just yet, especially since the rates were insanely cheap. So the next day, after chatting with a few resort employees, we got a tip about a beautiful nearby cenote we just had to check out. They gave us directions, and not long after, we found ourselves driving down yet another dirt path, this one much closer to the resort. We followed the directions exactly as they'd told us, drove all the way to the end of the dirt road, and parked when we saw a hand-painted wooden sign pointing us toward the cenote. There were no other cars around, no other tourists in sight. At first that seemed like a bonus. We thought we'd scored a hidden gem, just us and nature. We followed the signs down a lush, peaceful trail shaded by jungle trees. It was quiet. Too quiet. At first it was calming, almost magical. But that calm quickly began to dissolve. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. And I don't mean some vague sixth sense kind of way. I mean we heard it, the rustling of leaves. Heavy footsteps moving through the jungle, close, but never close enough to see. I whispered to Claire, "Let's just keep walking." We tried to brush it off and kept following the signs. That's when a man stepped out from the trees, completely unannounced, and started speaking to us in Spanish. I gave my go-to response again, "No hablo español." That's when he switched to broken English, saying something about taking us to the cenote, that he'd show us the way. Claire and I exchanged a silent, nervous glance. Something didn't feel right. Still, we followed him hesitantly, hoping maybe this was all part of the local experience. But it didn't take long to realize something was off. The man led us down a different path, veering away from the signs completely. Claire nudged me and subtly pointed to the back of his pants. There, sticking out of his pocket, was the unmistakable handle of a very large knife. I leaned in and whispered, "Run." I gave Claire a push and we both bolted. Thankfully, the man wasn't fast. He started chasing us, but we quickly gained ground. We sprinted through the jungle path, hearts pounding, branches whipping past our faces. We made it back to the car, and for a second, I thought the worst was over. But just as we shut the doors, 3 other people, who we hadn't seen before, emerged from the jungle and rushed toward us. They started yanking on the door handles, trying to rip them open. Then came the pounding, fists slamming against the windows, trying to shatter them. Luckily, I got the engine going before anything cracked. We peeled out of there, leaving a trail of dust behind us. Claire was sobbing, and honestly, I was barely holding it together myself. 2 days in a row of terrifying, nearly violent encounters. We were done. We took the car straight back to the rental place. Miraculously, there were no dents, just a thick layer of jungle dirt. From there, we caught the shuttle back to the resort, and we didn't leave the property again until it was time to fly home. We warned the resort staff, hoping they'd alert other guests. But as for us, we haven't returned to Mexico since. And honestly, I don't know if we ever will. This happened in an area that was supposed to be safe, near the resorts. But after 2 back-to-back near attacks, it just didn't feel worth the risk anymore.